What's up, you guys? My name is Aubrey. This is my channel, and you guys know how much I love to talk about side hustles. Talking about how to make money in your free time using many of the tools you already have at your disposal is one of the things that I love discussing on this channel. And I'm gonna be honest that after spending nearly 2 years talking about this topic, it has become increasingly difficult to find new and fresh ideas to make some extra money. But I have some good news. In this video, we're gonna be talking about a side hustle that I have never talked about before on this channel. In fact, up until recently, I had no idea that this even existed. And in this video, we'll be breaking down what this side hustle is, how to get started, and how much you can expect to earn. So let's get started. Now, my favorite types of side hustles are the ones that you're able to, number one, use the items that you already have at your disposal, meaning you don't need to go out and buy a bunch of stuff or learn a bunch of stuff in order to get started. You're able to use the tools and resources that you already know or that you already have in order to start making money immediately. Number two, I love those semi-passive or passive income streams, meaning those income streams where your income isn't tied to how much time you dedicate to the side hustle. A few examples of these types of income streams would be things like Airbnb, Outdoorsy, Get Around, Verbo, Turo. The list goes on and on, but the fact is these are my favorite types of side hustles because of the fact that the income potential associated with them are quite high, especially when it comes to a part-time side hustle. But before we dive in, if you guys could do me a huge favor, and if you could hit the like button and hit the notification bell for the YouTube algorithm, I would greatly appreciate it. This helps my channel grow because it helps let YouTube know that you guys are enjoying my content, and thus they will then push my content out to a new audience. So if you could take the 0.5 seconds to do that, I would greatly appreciate it. Now, on this channel, we've discussed a lot of different ways you can rent out your current belongings. We've talked about renting out baby equipment, renting out parking spaces, attic spaces, shed space, your house, your room, your car, your RV, your camper van. We have truly covered almost every way that you can make money by renting out things that you already own. But what if I told you that there's a way that you could make money by renting out your backyard or your swimming pool? And that's the exact side hustle that we'll be talking about today. Now, there is a peer-to-peer sharing app called Swimply, and I am not exactly sure how to pronounce it. To be honest, I'm not a huge fan of the name because I keep wanting to say Swimly, but that is almost definitely not what it's actually called. It is spelled Swimply, so I would assume it's pronounced Swimply, which is a tongue twister for me at least. Swimply is a peer-to-peer sharing app that allows for you to rent out your swimming pool to your peers. So think of it like an Airbnb, but rather than renting out your house, you are renting out your backyard, more specifically your swimming pool, for a specific amount of time at a specific rate per hour. For example, how it works is you go onto the Swimply website, and then from there you type in where you live or where you want to rent a swimming pool, for what dates you want to rent this pool for, and for what duration you want to rent it for as well. Then from there, Swimply will pull up a list of different pools that you can take a look at. For example, if we search my hometown of Dallas, Texas in the Swimply app, you can actually find a lot of pools available to you, 132 to be specific. And if you go through the listing, you can find a variety of different types of pools that kind of meet a different set of needs. For example, this heated M Street getaway with hot tub, an urban oasis, a mid-century pool. And if you keep scrolling, you will find a variety of different pools with different features, including jacuzzis, including hot tubs, including toys like basketball hoops, volleyball nets, things like that. There's also lakefront pools. There are very large pools for large gatherings. The list goes on and on. Now, of course, depending on where you are searching for a pool and where you live will dictate what types of pools are available to you to rent, or alternatively, what types of pools you will have to compete with if you're somebody that is wanting to be a host on this platform. For example, if we look at Los Angeles, the pools are quite a lot nicer than they are here in Dallas. At least they seem that way from the initial photos. But you can see that in Los Angeles, there are 277 pools available. Alternatively, if we look at a city like Miami, it seems like either the supply is less or the demand is higher. I'm not exactly sure what the case is, but there are 68 pools available in Miami. And if you compare, Miami to Los Angeles to Dallas, the variety of different offerings from a pool's perspective is quite broad. Like, there are a lot of different pools to choose from. So where you are is going to have a pretty significant impact on whether or not your pool would be a good fit for a service like Swimply. So how Swimply works is they're of course the host where these transactions take place. So you list your pool on this website, you take photos, you write a listing, you determine how much you want to rent this pool for, and then Swimply will find you customers through their platform. But they do take 15% of everything that you earn. So you would want to take that into account whenever you are listing your pool on Swimply and when you are figuring out how much you want to rent that pool for. Now, whenever it comes to renting out your pool, you can rent it out on a daily or even hourly basis, and you can determine the price of your pool based off of how big your pool is, the different features that your pool offers, how aesthetic it is. You can take a wide variety of factors into account when determining how much your pool is actually worth. Now, there are a few things that I do think you should keep in mind with this type of side hustle if you would be interested in pursuing it. Number one is the fact that I do think there is a bit of legal liability associated with this type of side hustle. The fact is, pools are inherently a bit dangerous. I grew up with a pool, and I know that with my parents, their insurance for their home policy ended up going up whenever they had a pool installed into their house because of the liability associated with having a drowning hazard like a pool. And whenever you start bringing strangers into the mix, it definitely adds complexity into the equation. And if you want to go a bit deeper into this scenario, bringing adults, potentially alcohol parties into the equation, the liability becomes a bit greater. So there is definitely risk involved, especially if there was some sort of accident, whether a drowning, whether somebody slips and falls, whether somebody hurts themselves. There is definitely some legal liability associated with this type of side hustle, but you could also make the argument that there is legal liability associated with Airbnb, with Turo, with all of these other side hustles as well. I don't know if Swimply opens you up to more or less legal liability than some of the other side hustles that I talk about on this channel, but I do think that the legal aspect of the side hustle is an important factor to take into account. Now, the other thing that I think is important to take into account is that similar to some of the other side hustles that we've spoken about on this channel, I think that, of course, this side hustle works particularly well for people that already have a pool. I certainly wouldn't go out and shell out the money to get a pool specifically to pursue this side hustle, but I think that if you are somebody that has a pool and maybe you don't use it as often as you thought you would, I think that this is a really cool side hustle to pursue. For example, like I mentioned a moment ago, I grew up with a pool, and as my siblings and I have gotten older, my parents have found less and less use for this pool. And until my siblings and I start having kids, the pool probably won't be used a whole lot. So a cool side hustle that my parents could explore is the possibility of renting it out to people that want to use a pool. That way they can recoup some of the costs of operating a pool that doesn't get a ton of use. The other thing that I think is important to note is what your pool could potentially be used for. And this is something that absolutely should be taken into account if you're somebody that is wanting to list their pool on Swimply. Now, depending on where you live and depending on what type of pool you have will highly dictate what your pool will be used for. For example, if you live in Los Angeles and you have a really aesthetic pool, I think it's a good guess to take that your pool would probably be used for things like social media influencers, music videos, content creation, and things like that. If you live in more of a normal area like I do, maybe your pool would be used for things like birthday parties or swim lessons, or even somebody who just simply wants a private pool to work out in. There are a ton of different ways that your pool could potentially be used for, and these different ways will probably differ depending on where you're located. Now, this is of course a very seasonal side hustle unless you live somewhere that is very warm all year round, for example, Florida, but I don't imagine there being a ton of use with this type of service in the winter months simply because it is too cold. Even if you have a heated pool, you would have to pay me to go swimming outside in the winter. I would not pay you to use your pool in the winter. And so there is of course a very seasonal aspect to this side hustle, which means it may not be viable for everyone. But in looking at the Swimply app, there are a wide array of different pools at a wide variety of different price ranges. There are some really nice pools that are being listed for $20 to $30 per hour. There are other pools that have some more luxuries to them, for example, a hot tub or a jacuzzi that are listed for $40 to $60 per hour. And I even found some extremely nice pools that are listed for upwards of over $100 per hour. But the amount that you can list your pool would of course be dependent on what type of pool you have, what different offerings you have along with your pool, as well as how big your pool, how aesthetic your backyard is, where you're located. There are just too many different factors to count that will dictate how much you can make from this type of side hustle. Now, like I mentioned earlier, I think that this is really a viable side hustle only for those people that already have a pool. I have in the past talked about buying a car for Turo or buying a property for Airbnb, but I would not advise on building a pool specifically for the side hustle. I just don't see the viability in it being that great to justify spending tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars of building a pool. But if you're somebody that already has a pool and you want to recoup some of the costs of operating that pool, or alternatively, if you're somebody that has a pool and you simply don't use it as much as you thought you would, then I think that this is a really cool route to explore, and I think that you could potentially make some good money with relatively low time commitment. Now, like always, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I will include a link down below of Swimply. I also found a video from Shelby Church, a vlogger who did a video on this as well. She rented a pool on Swimply to try it out, and then she documented her findings. So if you want to check that out, I will include all of those links down in the description below. Like always, if you guys have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell. And I will see you guys in the next video.